Hello and welcome to this episode of Church at Home as we prepare for the 30th Sunday of Ordinary Time. I'm Father Michael.
I'm Jim.
I'm Father Ed.
Father Joshua.
And this week we find a familiar story that I'm sure we've heard many times and recognize again as a Pharisee and a tax collector go to the temple to pray, and they both have some words to say, but I think the scene is a little different and it comes off a little bit differently for each of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we get our Pharisee. He has a fairly long speech about all of the great things that he has done. And he's supposed to be praying towards God. And it actually says in the beginning, Father Michael pointed it out, that it says that he prayed to himself, which is a very interesting line. Yeah, that he's, and I don't think it, sometimes we like talk to it, like whisper to ourselves, like in a quiet voice. But I think it wasn't that way. I think he was really directing his prayer towards himself, and he kind of then spends the whole time bragging, whereas our publican or the tax collector, he says. He says one line, and it's just about asking God for mercy, and it's directed towards God. So there's a lot of differences between the way they speak. Yeah.
So we were wondering about what we might appreciate with praying and our praying from these two characters that are presented to us. Maybe you're familiar. There's a very simple ACTS, A-C-T-S, is a way of maybe understanding prayer. So we have, adoration, confession, thanksgiving, and supplication. There's other ways, in the liturgy we have adoration, we have praise, we have thanks, we have intercessions, we have many types of praying in the context of our behavior in church, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have these two guys in the temple, and we see that there's some real essentials about praying that we're not seeing from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I think the object of our prayer is God, obviously, it should be. And so we see the tax collector, he has that down. Matter of fact, he cannot even pick his head up because he is in such reverence and humility before God's presence. Pharisee, of course, as we said, he doesn't even have God in the picture. And then, of course, we did mention that Pharisee was really praying not for his own sake or even God's sake, but for everybody else's sake. So he was really kind of just announcing.
Look at all the good
status.
stuff I've done.
Yeah. So I was reminded of the first Sunday of Lent, or maybe it's Ash Wednesday, when Jesus is instructing us about prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, and he says that we should do all of those things secretly. So the Pharisee really kind of is standing up, and that's what he's talking about, and he's talking about out loud and in front of the people. And so he really is kind of the counterexample of what Jesus is inviting us to do. So,
Yeah.
Jim, you want to add anything to this?
I just thinking that it was somewhat relational. Like the publican is trying to relate to God. He's asking for forgiveness and stuff like that, whereas the Pharisee is not at all. He's just by himself, talking to himself. There's no relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So humility and pride, I guess, would probably be the vice and the virtue that are being held out. Humility is what the graceful view of oneself as God sees us, or as we actually are. And pride is the insistence on the centrality of self before everyone, including God. So we have some virtues, and maybe you're suffering with your prayer isn't as satisfying as you would like it to be, and so maybe, I don't know, some of these features might be part of your life. Well, who are you praying to when you go to church? How concerned are you about everybody else and what they're doing? How prideful are you? You want to make sure other people see you there rather than. So there, I don't know if anybody else has some.
Well, Saint Teresa of Lisieux's definition or explanation of prayer was coming to mind as we were discussing this, and she talks about it and describes it as the lifting of one's heart and mind to God. And so there's always in Father Estock mentioned the acts and the different forms or methods of prayer. So there's different methods or ways of praying, and we're going to pray in consolation and in sadness, in need and in thanksgiving. In season and out, just at all times and for many reasons. And so there might be times where we're feels like we're telling God things, other times where we're receiving, we're asking, we're praising. It's just, there's so many different variables. But in the end, I think through all of it, taking a note from St. Therese, the point, and to Jim's point about it being relational, we're always trying to have our will drawn more in line with God's will. To see ourselves the way God sees us, to see others the way God sees them, to see the world the way God, to love as He loves, to want what He wants, to have our wills conform to His, to grow in that relationship.
Yeah.
Isn't that
through all kinds of prayer?
Is that the quote that starts the fourth part of the prayer section in the Catechism? Is that what
it's probably quoted?
Yes. It's a great section in the Catechism.
Yeah. So that's the other thing. Good reminder of everybody. And beautifully said. The Catechism of the Catholic Church, there are 4 major parts of it, and the fourth one is prayer, and in a sense, Christian perfection. So you might be interested in going there to learn more about praying, we can all do better at it. Jim mentioned, and Psalm for this week is the Lord hears the cry of the poor, and that the first reading assures us that God always hears the prayers of the poor. And so maybe that's what the publican, the tax collector shows us, is that he's really poor.
At least
before
spiritually.
God. Spiritual poverty, and so we could probably all learn something from that as well. So.
And the nice thing too, as you were talking about the catechism, there is an online version of the catechism on the USCCB website.
Right.
If you want to check that
free.
out.
Free.
Yeah.
You can search it.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a great resource. We're really blessed as Catholics. So, all right.
Have a great week.
Yeah.
Yep.
Keep
blessed.
praying. Bye.